Okay, hi everyone. As a way of introduction, my name is John Bosco, but like my friends used to call me, feel free to call me JB. Okay. So if this is the first time you are joining me, welcome to I Need Scrum Master, my YouTube channel. I've made two videos already. The first one was introduction. The second one was kind of a high-level discussion on an introduction about Scrum, which I titled The Mechanics of Scrum, Part 1. So for today, I'm going to do part 2 of that video, which is part 2. In other words, today is the mechanics of Scrum, part 2. Today, we'll be discussing in detail about Agile, what makes Agile, which is the Agile Manifesto and the 12 principles. In other words, we'll be taking a detailed look at the 4 values of the Agile Manifesto and the 12 principles. In other words, not just reading them, but also try to give a deeper level analysis and implementation on how that works in with different teams and different environments. So for today, I will be talking about under the table discussion of Agile Manifesto and analysis of the Agile Manifesto and the 12 principles, and then some kind of implementation and end notes about Agile, which we're going to wrap up our the mechanics of Scrum before we can now enter the new age of Scrum. As always, I'll be putting up a PowerPoint slide, so you can also follow along as I kind of explain some information concerning Scrum. All right, so obviously there are a lot of information and resource materials online that has tried to explain about Agile, the Agile Manifesto, and the Scrum Agile principles. Today, I'm going to take another dimension, another look at these principles. Before I dive into detailed analysis, explanation, implementation, and even some criticism about this Agile Manifesto and the 12 principles, I just wanted to, let you know that one key difference today is to take a step backwards, look at the original or historical fact behind the word manifesto. Not just that I'm trying to, draw your attention to the idea of manifesto, because some people, like myself, I was really frightened by the word manifesto, but I have to really understand it outside of Agile environment and also trying to transpose it into Agile environments. Okay, so I did a little bit of research, obviously, in my own experience as a Scrum Master and Agile coach for a long time now. I have been trying to coach my team and even some of my students about the concept of manifesto. The word manifesto originally is derived from the Latin word manifestus, right? And what that means, or literally means, something that is easy to perceive or recognize, right? You could say it is like a thesis statement. You could say it is more or less like a public policy, right? So manifesto, for example, if you could be able to think or imagine manifesto, you can link it to, for example, the Declaration of Independence for the United States, or you can link it to things like, we could say the Declaration of Independence. But in other words, if I have to, or if we have to take the definition given by Merriam-Webster Dictionary, it says that manifesto is, quote, a statement in which someone makes his or her intentions or views easy for people to ascertain, end quote. And then how do we tie this dictionary definition of manifesto to the concept of Agile Manifesto? Like I said, we have taken a look at outside context of manifesto, and now we are trying to tie it together to the Agile environments. Okay, if we can, if I may have to draw your attention to the meaning of Agile Manifesto, I would love to take you a little bit step backwards to the fact of how 17 software developers gathered somewhere in Utah in 2001. And what were they trying to do? They were trying to perhaps trying to reimagine, trying to come up with innovative way of working on software, different in contrast to the waterfall environment. I mean, people were tired about comprehensive documentation. They were tired of a lot of complexities in terms of software, but they needed a much more flexible, adaptive way of working, in environments and projects in such a way that the customer will be much more happy. Okay, so the Agile Manifesto was initially and officially called Manifesto for Agile Software Development. And like I said, this idea came from as a result of the convention that 17 software developers gathered at Utah in 2001. And for me, I would love to agree. You can disagree with me, or you can agree with me that the Agile Manifesto could be, synonymously be linked to the word greed. Like you have things like the Nicene greed, right? Something like, like what you have conscientiously believe, or what, like a conventional agreement, if I have to say that, or like I initially said, thesis statements or mission statements. Why the Agile Manifesto? So as a public declaration, the 17 developers thought of better way to improve software development, software development work processes. So in other words, the why is an innovative way to make sure that people or team can be able to function optimally in order to create, or in order to ship, increments that this customer will be very much satisfied. So that is like a niche about why they came up with that Agile Manifesto. Like I initially pointed out, so these developers were more or less dissatisfied with a lot of comprehensive documentation, a lot of time spent. Sometime at the end of that project, the customer would not be happy. So in other words, they wanted a way to be able to tweak things around, and then to be able to loop in the customer within the project life cycle. If we have to compare the Agile Manifesto, where and how, or what can we really correlate or link it to? Actually, for me, I would say there are two documents. I've already mentioned one, which is the Declaration of Independence, right? So the other one that I would love to link in order to, draw your attention to what Agile Manifesto really means is what is called the Communist Manifesto. If you are so much into political science, you're much more closer to the Communist Manifesto, which was engineered by Karl Marx and Frederick Engels. So in order to create that ideal state, right? In order to create the Plato's, ideal world, Karl Marx, for people who are Marxists, you could much more understand, but for people who are new to political science, the Communist Manifesto was engineered by Karl Marx in order to create that ideal state where, everybody, what seems to be like the ideal state where equality will reign, where capitalism will be, dragged to the mud, right? So these two guys came up with this Communist Manifesto. In other words, they wanted to reimagine, redesign a much more better, way of living together in society. And then you can link that to what the 17, group of engineers who gathered in Utah in order to re-engineer, redesign, create that new architecture of working on projects. Okay, so, just something to keep in mind, even though that these 17 software developers had, they were kind of working towards software development, it doesn't necessarily mean that this is limited to software. It could apply it to any kind of project, any kind of business adventure you are into. The principles or the value that it derives still remains the same. So it doesn't necessarily mean, oh, okay, because it has to come from, or the originators were software developers, that it has to all be, software development. No, you can apply it to all other projects that you have in mind. Okay, just to take a little break here. So if you are joining us for the first time, if you are joining if you just come across my channel, feel free to like, share, subscribe, or you can even refer anybody that you think might be very interested in about Agile. Perhaps you've heard about Agile, but you're not sure about where to start. Believe me, this is the correct and the appropriate channel for you to, get your feet wet in terms of Agile, what it means, how far people have journeyed using Agile, criticisms, appraisals, and even, way forward for Agile. For today, I will try as much as I can to keep to the time box because everything we do in Scrum and Agile is always time box, be it the sprints, planning, Scrum, daily stand-up, review, retrospective. Whatever we do, we keep it to the time. So I'll try as much as I can, like I said on the first video I made, between the range of 15 to 30 minutes, no matter the topic of discussion. So for today, I'll try as much as I can not to go beyond that time box. Could be 15 minutes, could be any time between 15 to 30 minutes. Okay, so there is something I used to call the under the table information about the Agile Manifesto. Why do I call it under the table? Because I have taken time to research. I have taken time to listen, attend seminars, and I realized that there are things that people don't really know about Agile. Whether you want to become an Agile coach, whether you want to become a Scrum Master, it is necessary that you have to really, really go to the root. In other words, you have to arrive at the roots before you can, I believe before you can build a house, you have to first of all set the foundation. So I'm trying to take you back to the foundation before we can now, begin to climb to the advanced level about Agile and then Scrum. Okay, I already mentioned about these 17 group of persons. Perhaps you have heard about the Agile Alliance, right? Perhaps you have come across the agilealliance.org, which is a website, a nonprofit community of practice that has grown over 1,000 or lots of persons, right? But how does that come into existence? The idea or the information behind that the Agile Alliance was actually the 17, originally was made up of the 17 group of software developers who started Agile, right? But because of how companies, organizations, teams have embraced, or even individuals have embraced the philosophy behind behind the principles, contained in the documents, right? It has scaled to and has grown and has expanded in such a way that, people, organizations are embracing and trying to implement or apply the knowledge behind this, on their different individual projects. You can find more information on www.agilealliance.org in order to figure out. I didn't want to bulk it today with all of these, background information, but I wanted to, get your attention on the salient points on Agile and then the philosophy behind the Agile Manifesto and the 12 principles. All right, so something to keep in mind, like I said, this Agile Manifesto was developed as a result of the convention held on February 11th to 13th, 2001 at the lodge at Snowbird Sky Resorts in Utah, USA. It was between that 2 days or 3 days event where this 17 group of software developers who were dissatisfied, like I mentioned, came up with these 4 values and 12 principles that has really carried over all of the Agile frameworks, because we have a lot of frameworks under Agile, which we're going to talk about later on in this channel. But for today, just keep in mind that the philosophy behind what we do in Scrum was as a result of the convention held on the 11th to 13th of February 2001. This 17 group of engineers, you can find more information on them when you go to www.agilemanifesto.org. This is the official website where you can get their list of names, and then you can, do your research about what they have done so far. But the 3 key, some of the key figures among the 17 group of developers are, you have people like Jeff Sunderland, you have people like Ken Schwaber, you have people like Dave Thomas, you have people like Martin Fowler. So these are, the key figures. It doesn't mean that other figures were not important, but I just wanted to draw your attention to some of the figures. To get more information about that, you can visit, www.agilemanifesto.org/history.html. All right, so let's dive into some analysis on the 4 values of the Agile Manifesto before we can now dive into the 12 principles. So like I said, we have the 4 values that makes up the Agile Manifesto, and then we have the 12 principles tied together on the Agile Manifesto. So my idea about the Agile Manifesto is just to explain in such a way that it becomes easier for you to grab and then to implement, because knowledge without application is a waste, right? So you need to, first of all, have the knowledge. And then for people who are new to Agile or Scrum, or people who are on their journey to become Scrum Master, sometimes when you're on an interview, they might ask you, for example, to explain, to analyze. So this is also an opportunity for you to gain the knowledge and then to scale through in your Scrum Master interview. So that is why information I share with you here is meant for everybody, whether you are baby Agile, right? You're new to Agile, or you are already a professional Scrum Master or Agile coach. Whoever, no matter your level of Agile knowledge, you can always gain, based on what I share here today. All right, so we have 4 information or 4 values that makes up the Agile Manifesto. So I'm going to first of all read the 4 values, and then I'm going to also interpret them or give some analysis on that. Like I said, I'm also sharing some PowerPoints or the slides, so you can always follow along as I go through the information here. Looking at the slide here, so you have the information on the left-hand side and information on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side, you have the 4 values. On the right-hand side, you have analysis. So the first point on the Agile Manifesto says, before that, this 17 group of persons kind of summarize the philosophy behind the Agile Manifesto by saying, quote, "We are uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others do it," end quote. As a Scrum Master, it's not about telling the client what we are doing. Also, it's about showing the client. So we are doing show and tell, right? So we want to tell our clients, but at the same time, we want to also show our clients, right? So these persons have experimented, have theorized, and then wanted to know if we can really apply, right? So today is to not just to tell you, but also to show you how you could apply that to your projects, depending on the domain knowledge or the domain environment of what the project is about. It could be data migration, it could be software development, it could be database management, it could be whatever the project is about, so it applies. It applies both on projects management. It can also apply to business environments. All right, so the first one says, quote, "individuals and interactions over processes and tools." And before that, I just wanted to draw your attention to, like, looking at the slide, you realize that some parts of the information were italicized just to give you an emphasis of where the importance lies. It doesn't mean that the full sentence doesn't make a sense, but just to give you an attention where the value much more lie. So when it says individuals and interaction over processes and tools, what does that mean? So looking at that, the emphasis or the interpretation is about people, individuals and interactions, right? If you are to form a Scrum team, right, the emphasis should be on the people rather than on the tools and the process. In a waterfall environment, the emphasis was on the tools and the process. For example, if you had followed or if you have listened or watched the previous video I made, the part 1 of the Scrum, the mechanics of Scrum, I kind of tried to break down the step-by-step or the stages of software development in a waterfall environment, right? You realize that you have the requirement stage, you have the designing stage, you have the execution stage, you have the maintenance stage, right? In each of those stages, the emphasis is always on those stages. rather than on the people doing the work. But in an agile environment, the emphasis is the people. The tools and the process work if people, team can be able to figure it out by themselves. The people need to perform or be at their optimal level, right? You can't, it is very difficult to be able to deliver value when people are not at their optimal level. So the people is the emphasis there. All right, so the second item there is, quote, working software over comprehensive documentation, right? Whatever you do, whatever you are doing, I mean, does it work? Quote and unquote, work, right? Can what you are producing, can your client or can your customer use it, right? Condensing technical specifications, which is in a waterfall environment, you're more or less concerned about technical specification requirements. But in an agile environment, all of those requirements are condensed into what is called user story. And what is a user story? A user story are software feature written, from the perspective of the customer. For example, the functionalities that the end user is using. I mean, those are the requirements, but they are written from the customer perspective, which I'm going to discuss about later on on this channel, right? So I mean, don't get overwhelmed if you don't understand what a user story is all about, but just know it is those functionalities or software features that are written from the perspective of the end user. All right. The third item is about customer collaboration over contract negotiation. The emphasis is customer collaboration, right? So because of constant change in customer requirement, team need to have communication, collaboration. Team collaboration is so important. You can't really minus anything from team collaboration. And a way to foster team collaboration is communication. The last but not the least, and among the 4 values, is responding to change over following a plan. Change is constant. Sometimes the client might always wants to tweak things in between or either minus or add. The team should be open. Those are receptive to change. All right. So now let's take a look at the 12 principles, right? So I'm just going to try as much as I can to contain the information within the time frame. All right, so the 12 principle, just give you like an intro, helps to derive or bring out the deeper meaning of Agile. I do believe so, right? Even though we have the 4 values, but the 12 principles helps. It cements as much as it cements them together, but it helps to flesh out. It fleshes out, it adds more meat to the discussion, right? So that's what I was saying. Now on the left-hand side, you have the 12 principles. Again, on the right-hand side, you have analysis. So I'm just gonna read. As I read, I will give the analysis. The first one says, our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. What the emphasis lie there is delighting the customer, right? I mean, every customer wants to be happy. And there's a difference between a happy customer and a delighted customer. So a delighted customer is on another level. We want to make the customer happy. We want to make our customer delighted. And how do you make sure you do that? By producing a working increment iteration. So the customer is the priority there. Second one says, welcoming changing requirement even late in development. I mean, requirements could change, but how is the team flexible? I do remember there was a time, I'm just going to tell you a little bit of story. Again, a Scrum Master, an excellent Scrum Master is a great storyteller. So if you hear me tell some stories, just accept it, okay? Okay, so I do remember there was a time my team, we have done our sprint planning. It was a 2-week sprint, right? And one thing I used to encourage my team members to do is, during our sprint plan, we used to have 2 or 3 days buffer time just in case an emergency or any kind of things happen or change in between, so we can use those buffer time to contain it, right? So 2-week sprints. The first week has come and gone. The second week, and then the second day of the sprint of the second week of the sprint, the customer came and added or requested to have a new requirement added to that particular sprint. Right, my team couldn't, there was some kind of resistance from my developers, but having the discussion first with the product owner, the PO, understanding why or whether it was necessary or important to add that to the current sprint, realizing what it was necessary, and then I had to also discuss with my developers, and I realized that it was also, necessary. These guys have, they have committed themselves. Remember, during the sprint planning, we have done estimation. In other words, the estimated amount of effort is going to cost to work on our projects. But by reminding them that if we are, going with the name Agile team or Scrum team, this is what is behind that, the philosophy. So by trying to engage them, reminding them what it means to be Agile, and again, there's a difference between being Agile and doing Agile. At some point, I will explain the difference and its applicability on a project, okay? But the picture here is, how is the team ready and open to welcome change, whether early in the project, late in the project, right? So the team should be very much open for that. The third one says deliver working software frequently from a couple of weeks to a couple of months with a preference to the shorter time scale. So the ideal in each sprint, okay, before that, the snapshot here is that the team should be able to work in what is called sprints, breaking the project into smaller time frame in order to work on the minimal viable products. Okay. The fourth one says business people and developers must work together daily throughout the project. What this support is team collaboration, which I've already mentioned about. And one key way to build that collaboration is let the team members communicate, talk to each other. Build projects around motivated individuals. Give them the environment and support they need and trust them to get the job done. Okay, so in a waterfall environment, the project manager is seen as the authority there. But in an agile environment, the project manager is not recognized as one of the team or Scrum team member. You have the product owner, you have the Scrum master, you have the developers. These three key roles, right? So in an agile environment, it's necessary to have the perfect team, right? Equip them with the right tools and empower them. That is what that entails. The sixth one says the most efficient and effective way of conveying information to and within a development team is face-to-face conversation. We understand that there are two phases of working with team members. You have team members that are within the same location, and then you have team members that are distributed. And we understand that within the COVID-19 period, most companies, if not all companies, went virtually, right? So, but according to the original mandate or original idea behind this is to communicate with your developers. The developers should communicate with themselves in a face-to-face environment, but perhaps in an environment where you have distributed team members, instead of conveying information either a phone call or emailing or using any kind of messenger, the idea is to have that information either using a Microsoft Teams or using Zoom or Slack is also another medium to have a visual or visual face-to-face conversation. All right. The seventh idea there says working software is the primary measure of progress. I was once in an interview, and then the developer, not the developer, the interviewer was asking, how do you measure progress? And the answer I gave was working software. Is what the team working on working? Does it work? If what the team is shipping to the client is working, that is one key way to measure progress. There are different metrics to use or different KPIs to use, but the idea is whatever the team is shipping to the clients, if it is working, that is an excellent way to measure success or progress. The eighth point there says Agile processes promote sustainable development. The sponsors, developers, and users should be able to maintain a constant pace indefinitely. The key thing there is consistency and speed. Consistency and speed. The team should avoid any kind of delay or any kind of constraint that will be able to draw them back in order not to meet the deadline. The ninth one says continuous attention to technical excellence and good design enhances agility. Developers should be mindful of the code they write, clean and efficient, right? Avoid any kind of complexities. Okay, the 10th one says simplicity, the act of maximizing the amount of work not done, is essential. Now, the interpretation I think works at this point is, as complexity leads to unreliability, teams should create the function as simple as possible, notwithstanding the functionality, notwithstanding the feature that the developer is working on. It should be as simple as possible. The 11th one says, the best architectures, requirements, and designs emerge from self-organizing teams. What defines an Agile or Scrum team is self-organization. What that means is these developers should be able to plan on how they should be able to work on a project without anybody dictating to them. Even as a Scrum Master, as an Agile coach, there are times I step behind and allow the developers to discuss. There are times I engage them or lead them on the discussion. So the idea is that managers and supervisors, stakeholders should understand that for a Scrum team to fully function as a Scrum team, which is another attribute of being Agile, there is that idea, and these developers need the decorum room and the empowerment to decide on how to work on a project. The final, but not the least, is at regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more efficient, then tunes and adjust. Retrospective, reflection, there is a need for at the end of every iteration, at the end of every sprint, at the end of every project, the developer should be able to reflect, right, for continuous improvement, reflect on how or what they need to do more or what they should do less. All right, so, just final notes to keep in mind. What is the importance of the Agile Manifesto, right? So the one primary importance of the Agile Manifesto is to prioritize and organize work and activities. It helps to let the developers know what is the primary focus here. And what summarizes the primary focus in each project or each sprint is customer satisfaction. It helps the developers, as far as the developers have it, keep in mind, has gotten that to their mind of why or what they should be targeting towards. You could agree with me that the Agile Manifesto has accomplished its mission, which is customer satisfaction. Does Agile work for every team and organization? As much as possible. I mean, there is this idea of Agile industrial complex. What does that mean? When supervisors or managers or stakeholders try to force team members to use some Agile practices, that doesn't really work. In other words, there is no one size fits all for Agile. Each team could tweak, could try to adapt or try to adjust the principles or the value or the manifesto in such a way that it suits the environment that they are working on. So as much as it's possible, try to avoid the Agile industrial complex. The last but not the least is implementing Agile. I just wanted to summarize how to implement Agile with a quotation by Martin Fowler, who is also one of the co-founders of Agile. Martin Fowler once said that, quote, even the Agile advocates wouldn't say that Agile is necessarily the best thing to use everywhere, end quote. So what does that mean? Flexibility, right, which has been one of the criticism that Agile has really gotten over the years. Some critics have said that Agile is so, it could be manipulated. It could be, anything could happen in Agile. But as much as people try to look at it from different angle, the point is Agile helps to deliver value, right? As one person said that the whole responsibility of a Scrum Master is summarized in helping team to deliver value. So there is no one size fits all. You could always adapt, can always tweak in there, things in there to make sure that the team is delivering value to customer in order to delight your customer. Okay. With that summarizes today's discussion. I hope you find this so fulfilling. I mean, you can always go back to the slides and revisit. Feel free to either leave some comment for me, or you can also email me at info@ineedscrummaster.com, and then I can be able to capture your comments and feedback. If you need a one-on-one section with me, please visit www.ineedscrummaster.com. That is my official website. I am always available to meet with you and then discuss on how I could help you, your team, and the organization to be agile, not to do agile. And if you have been hearing about agile, or perhaps you have the interest to become a Scrum Master, please also reach out to me on by visiting www.ineedscrummaster.com. And then you can schedule a one-on-one session, free consultation, and then I can be able to meet with you and then see how I could be able to help. That's it for today. And if you have any question, please don't fail to reach out. Don't forget to like, don't forget to share, don't forget to subscribe, refer your friends, colleagues, and then tell them about ineedscrummaster.com. All right. That is where I will stop for today. Keep an eye on the next release for these contents, which is going to be in the next 4 days. So like I said, I'll be releasing twice every week, Mondays and Fridays, and then I'll try as much as I can to keep the pace, and then I'll try as much as I can to respond to inquiries and comments and questions. All right, thank you so much for today, and then I will see you again next time. All righty, bye for now.